We're back to the Neil Haley Show. My guest today's author, Len Sciuto. And Len, you're so excited. The book comes out, Hades Crypt, on November 18th. You got to be really excited.
I am. I think it's more than excited. There's relief along with because it's been a long time. As I do the process to create one of these books, um, it's long and involved because I've got to do all the research. I got to look at the documentation. Then I have an idea, and then I research that idea, and then I decide what the beginning point is, and then what the end point is, and then I create an outline, and I go from there. You know, and then from the outline, I'll start writing the chapters, and as I go along, I'll write maybe two or three chapters. And one of the nice things about where I am, being a retired guy, um, I can write between the hours at 9 o'clock at night till 1 in the morning without interruption, which is what I do. And so when I create a new chapter, I'll go back two or three chapters and review those chapters to make sure everything's in line and they're all connected like links in a chain, so to speak. And I go through it that way. Then as I get closer to the end, uh, I decide. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. As I'm about
Yeah.
halfway through, I'll start thinking about what the title's going to be. Now, Hades Crypt, just like my previous two, Tango Down, China Sea, and the Devil's Delegation, based upon current events, my two tours at the Pentagon, and my military experiences. And I'll give you a little bit of history of that if you don't mind, Neil.
Sure.
When I was in submarines, because I was involuntarily recalled to active duty at the height of the Cold War, um, I applied for an early out, which is 90 days. And, and I had reconnected with the university I was going to, paid my fees, tuition. I found an apartment. I was ready to go. And so my 90 days was approved prior to that, what I just mentioned. And I'm in the barracks, and the gentleman that oversees security in the barracks came to see me and said, Squadron would like to talk to you. Okay. So I went over to Squadron and I saw this master thief. I don't remember his name because it's been too long. And he says, we canceled your 90-day early out. And I said, wait a minute, you guys approved it. Why is this approved? He said, because the SSN Bergall, her hull number was 67, has just been commissioned and she's going out to sea trials and they need a navigator. You're it. And I said, I've already applied for school. I paid my tuition. I paid for fees. I signed a contract for an apartment. Isn't there somebody else you could find? He goes, Steady Officer Sciuto, it's not a big deal. He said, you're only going to be gone 10 to 12 days. And he said, so you may want to go down there and check in because they're getting ready to move probably in the next 24 hours. So, okay, I guess I can do that. I went down to the boat, I checked in, and out we went for sea trials. And that's basically like in Hades Crypt, it's called the shakedown cruise. And what they do is they check all the systems. They take the boat down in gradual declination in depth, down close to what the submarine's crush depth is. And then they bring her back up, and then we have all these drills. There's the collision drill, there's the flooding drill, there's battle stations, there's this, there's that. But the problem was we weren't out for 10 to 12 days. 94 days later, we pulled into port, and I missed the first semester. So that gives you an idea of what it was like. And in those 92 days, we spent a little bit of time underneath the ice because the boat was home ported out of New London, Connecticut. And that, plus, like I mentioned, current events, what's been going on inside the Arctic Circle since about 2020, I came up with the idea to write Hades Crypt.
That's it's awesome. And what do you hope your readers learn most about this from the book?
Well, the goal of all of the books that I write, basically, to be honest with you and open, uh, there are things that go on that most Americans, or most people globally, are not aware of. Like, for example, um, I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention it again on a previous podcast, that there are 8 countries that are inside the Arctic Circle. Now, when the research was done in that area, the Arctic Circle, they found at the time unlimited amounts of that crude oil, natural gas, and precious metals. And the countries that were inside the Arctic Circle had the opportunity to tap into those resources. And as an example, the United States has one oil production field. Um, Russia has 64. Canada has 4. And then the other 5 countries are Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Greenland. Um, is one other. I can't remember the name right off the top of my head. But we all have production fields inside the Arctic Circle. And in 2020, when the administration came into power, we relied on foreign oil. And so that oil, some of that oil came through from the Arctic Circle through some of those countries. Like, for example, we were buying oil from Russia. We were buying oil from the United Arab Emirates, which is not inside the Arctic. We were buying oil from Canada. As an example, 2020, we were buying 8% from Russia, none from China because they don't have any, none from Iran, and we were buying some from Canada as well. So that the amount of oil from Canada was like 4%. In 2024, after the presidential election, I'm sorry, in 2020, after the presidential election, that amount, because the American oil production was decreased significantly, we were buying 13% oil from Russia. Now, Iran also has oil, but they were selling the oil to China. China was jacking up the price, and we were buying Chinese oil at 8%. So it's Russia 13%, China 8%, which has no natural resources like that, and Iran, which was 4%. So we, in essence, were buying oil from countries that were potential adversaries. So as I looked at all of this, I found out that at the time in 2020, Russia had 3 military bases inside the Arctic. The United States had none. And in 2025, when President Trump took office as the president and the commander-in-chief, Russia moved 2 carrier battle groups from the upper northwest corner of Russia to the upper northeast corner of Russia. And they opened up former airstrips and radar stations up there inside the Arctic. At the same time, they started moving military troops inside the Arctic Circle with the intention of creating ground forces at bases inside that circle. The United States today is planning on an estimate, and I have not been able to confirm the amounts, but I'll give you the rumors that I've heard. There are 10 bases that the United States intends to create inside the Arctic. Russia, from 3 bases, has gone what they estimate to be between 20 to 30 bases. At the same time, as the Ukrainian war was going on, Russia declared that the entire territory inside the Arctic Circle belonged to Russian territory. That's not true, because of those 8 countries, 6 of those countries belong to NATO, and it was blocked. So when I started doing the research, the Hades Crypt, I found out that there are more than a trillion barrels of crude oil in and under the Arctic Circle. I found out there were billions of cubic meters of natural gas in and under the Arctic Circle. I found out that the precious metals are immeasurable. That's how much is in and under the Arctic Circle. And I'm sure you are aware that as we plan for um, potentially confrontation, we have to consider oil, especially for things like aircraft fuel, vessel fuel, other than nuclear power, metals for computers, and satellites, techniques, and drones, and that kind of thing. So it's a how do I put this? It's kind of like the gold rush when Alaska was discovered in Alaska. It's gigantic, and everybody wants a piece of the pie. So as I found all of this out, I got the idea to write Hades Crypt because that kind of information, most people have no idea about not only the natural resources under the Arctic Circle, but the fact that there are other countries that are trying to force, I will use the word force, their influence inside the Arctic Circle on other countries and try to take control of it. And that's how Hades Crypt was created.
That I think that how you're able to create this, and also you want our readers that read the book to understand that things like this can happen again, and a lot worse this time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm trying to raise public awareness. Like when I wrote Devil's Delegation, that was based on Desert Shield and Storm, and I had the operations aspects of that war. Um, the nuclear aspects of that um, is unbelievable. There are all kinds of ways that these people, when the border was open and they were unvetted, they could have brought components into this country without being detected and assemble a nuclear device inside this country and detonate it somewhere. That was my greatest fear. Um, so when I wrote Devil's Delegation, that was the intention was to make people aware that there are all kinds of possible scenarios that you can get your hands on a nuclear device, hide it, make it undetectable, bring it into the United States, and use it against our country. Now, the Devil's Delegation book uh, was premised upon an experimental weapon. And that, when the research came out and there was testing of laser weapons being used on surface craft in the United States Navy and possibly aircraft, by the way, um, that gave me the idea, attach it to a submarine and use it as an undersea weapon. And so that weapon, plus again, the the global politics of countries that want to take advantage of other countries, plus current events and my time at the Pentagon created that. And the awareness there is, as we progress technologically, not only in our own country, but in other countries throughout the globe, technological advances are going to dictate how we approach what I will call actions related to confrontation. As you know, China has come up with a hypersonic missile. The United States is testing a hypersonic plane. And in my personal opinion, surface craft, including carriers, in the future are going to be obsolete. Everything is going to be at a high rate of speed. Everything is going to be detectable. The time factor is the one that is immeasurable right now. As an example, if China were to launch a hypersonic missile at the United States, we have 6 minutes just to try to neutralize that weapon, and that's a hypothesis on my part because hypersonic is faster than the speed of sound. Obviously, it's faster than Mach 2, Mach 3, and Mach 1 is 150 miles an hour. That gives you an idea. So Um, as I'm writing the sequel to the Devil's Delegation, which is entitled right now, I'm 23 chapters into it. That one, the premise on that is a terrorist group kidnapping and torturing authors of people of governmental departments that write national contingency plans to get the information in an attempt to neutralize that plan or plan to find a way to attack the United States. So all of these things that I write about are public information. And of course, you know that the first two books I cleared through Navy security and Coast Guard security. And because I do not want to have, in the middle of the night, have somebody knock on my door and say, "You're under arrest. I'm going to read you your rights." I make sure that do not release any kind of sensitive information, because I don't want to make little rocks out of big rocks in Leavenworth.
And you're not going to end up doing that, sir. That's not going to happen. And I think that, thinking about submarines, in your book, do you really understand what it means to be inside a submarine in the way you write?
Well, it's a sacrifice, Neil. I was single, so it wasn't so bad for me. But, you have crew members that are married and have children or have outside interests. And there's no way that you can address issues that are at home while you're out at sea. Thing. Second thing is, submarine is an offensive weapon. And when you are on that boat, that submarine, your mind processes are all related to offensive and defensive postures. So you normal routine, you can be on silent routine, you can be on silent battle stations, you can be at regular battle stations. You have to be your awareness and your anxiety level and your thought process all are at a heightened level. Yeah, you can think about home, but you put that to the back of your mind because you have to focus on what your job is. And your job is the defense of the United States and protecting the American people. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it definitely does answer my question. And it's sacrifice. It's a sacrifice inside the submarine. It's a sacrifice of the time you spend on the sea and all those challenges, for sure.
And you're constantly training too. And in a 24-hour cycle, I will tell you that you'll be on watch. Like I was a navigator, so I'd be checking navigation and working with navigation on an 8-hour block of time. And then I would have an 8-hour block of time to be able to sleep and do some of the things that help you relax a little bit, like read a book or play games or possibly watch a movie or that kind of thing. The other 8 hours is your training. You're training to what is your duty station when the collision alarm sounds? What are you going to do and how are you going to react and where are you going to be when flooding occurs in a compartment? What are you going to do and how do you react and what are your duties and responsibilities if a fire breaks out or you have a nuclear gas release inside them? So that's basically a 24-hour time span. Now, the other aspect is on the nuclear Navy, it's a little different than in the diesel boat Navy, and I was in both. I started out in diesel boats. That because we could not stay down for a long period of time. You were running on the surface, you were running under the nuclear boats today are all under sea time. And usually the way it works out, there were two crews. There's a blue crew, there's a gold crew. Now, and those are what we call 90-day blocks. So what I just described to you as to what my duties are on the boat and my time frame in the 24-hour time frame, you can put that into 90-day blocks. So you get 30 minutes of training, 30 minutes off, and 30 minutes of prep to get ready to get underway. and then that's the blue crew. And then when the boat comes back in, the blue crew leaves, and the gold crew comes aboard and goes through that process as well. So it's a constant swap for those two crews on the same submarine. The other aspect of this that I think people need to be aware of, um, in order for us to release any type of torpedo or weapon, there's a process that has to be confirmed, and it trickles down from what I will call the National War Room through the Commander in Chief. Those codes are changed on a regular basis to ensure that they are not compromised, to ensure that there's no access from unauthorized personnel for use. And so those constantly change. And in the event that you have to use a weapon like that, there is a certain series of security aspects that have to be visualized, documented, confirmed, and then you wait for a final word to go into action. I'll call it that. So it's nothing like most people would expect. Um, my dad was a Navy corpsman with the Marines in World War II and spent with them 4.5 years in the South Pacific, and he was on Guadalcanal, and he was also saw a portion of Iwo Jima. And what he said to me was, no matter what branch of the service you're in, as you do your duty, you realize that God is in every foxhole, on every ship, in every cockpit of an airplane, and in every tank, et cetera, et cetera. And that's realistically true. Um, Submarines, you realize there's no way of escape.
Right.
So you deal with it. The first dive on the diesel boat that I went aboard after she came out of the yard crew missed a wooden cone where they penetrated the pressure hull in the conning tower of that submarine, put in new equipment, and run electrical cabling. And they missed that cone. And we were at 300 feet going to 325, and I was in the conning tower at the time. And when all of a sudden we heard pop, and this huge stream of water started entering the conning tower. We were going from 300 to 325 feet. There was an emergency surface. By the time we got to the surface, the periscope welds, which were, I don't know, they're like maybe 30 or 40 feet. I don't remember the exact measurement, but they were 30 or 40 feet deep. Both periscope welds in the conning tower full of water, and we were standing in ankle deep water in the conning tower by the time we got to. And they were pumping that compartment out, by the way, as we were rising.
Oh my gosh.
So that gives you an idea of types of things that can happen. As a joke, what I usually tell people who are unfamiliar with submarines, I'll say, when I enlisted in the Navy way back when, my dad saw Vietnam coming, and I got to boot camp. They first of all, when you sign up, they give you what they call a basic battery exam. So they identify your strengths and your weaknesses. And because I was a science major in school, and that was my interest, my specialties and my greatest strength was mathematics and science. So I opted to become a navigator because it's mathematics. And in the old movie Master and Commander, you see the guy up on the forecastle of the sailing vessel using a sextant to take sunline. That was part of my job. I actually used the sextant when we were outside territorial waters where long range radio aids to navigation was used. And so uh, when you take that basic battery test, they give you three options. You can be this, or this. It's your choice. Then they send you to school for that. But what I like to tell people is, at the end of that test, they sit you down in a room one-on-one with a psychiatrist, and you're given a psychological test. And if you fail that test, they send you to submarine.
All right. So that's a joke. That's a joke to end the show. The book is going to be out on November 18th. Go to jlensciuto.com. Appreciate it, Len, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much. You
uh,
have a great day. Thank you, people,
you're
for
welcome.
listening.
You're listening and watching the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back.